All right, so WNBA owners have officially left. The WNBA and players text message left on red. That's right. The players DM the owners on Instagram, and the message now says seen with no response. This is what happens when this is the definition of F around and find out. And now the players are finding out. And now it seems like they're trying to play victim and win over public perception once again. We got to break this down. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, and hype the video. Let's get right into things.
It is official. The class, the WNBA owners, have officially walked away from the table. The players' final message, a direct Instagram DM sent to the ownership group as a last-ditch effort, now simply reads, "Seen," with absolutely no response. That tiny seen notification is the cold, hard reality check that hits when the league decides it has finally had enough of the back-and-forth drama and simply ghosts the negotiation.
Bell notification and hype the video. Let's get right into things. The clown show continues. The WNBA owners have had enough. Quite frankly, it's that simple. They've had enough of the back and forth. They did not even want to do a extension up to January 9th, and they stopped responding to these players more than 2 weeks ago. And Breanna Stewart made it seem like the conversation was still going on and all of this stuff. Now the players are talking about they want to negotiate in good faith. Why are they saying that? Because the owners do not feel that the players have been negotiating in good faith. Let's get into this article right here on ESPN. WNBA CBA Q&A. Nneka Ogwumike.
What happens next is what really matters. This isn't just a standard breakdown in talks or a pause in the conversation. It is a complete and total shutdown, signaling a massive, seismic shift in the power dynamics of the league. The owners, it seems, are completely done playing games, effectively turning their backs and leaving the players' union to face the severe consequences of their unyielding demands alone.
The players are talking about they want to negotiate in good faith. Why are they saying that? Because the owners do not feel that the players have been negotiating in good faith. Let's get into this article right here on ESPN. WNBA CBA Q&A. Nneka Ogwumike, Nafisa Collier on standstill. Now, you're about to listen to some ladies playing victim. That's what you are about to hear all throughout this. And then in this article where the interviewer asked them about what Caitlin Clark had to say about the compromise, they try to sweep it under the rug and act like it did not happen because they do not want to compromise on anything. They're not really trying to have a season.
Is this fair or not? This is the moment where everything starts to crumble. And believe me, the ramifications of this collapse will be felt across the entire WNBA ecosystem. If you want to stay updated on how this mess plays out, make sure you hit that notification bell and hype the video because this story is just getting started.
About the compromise, they try to sweep it under the rug and act like it did not happen because they do not want to compromise on anything. They're not really trying to have a season, man. They got Unrivaled. They got Project B. These are the complete conflicts of interest. I don't even know how they are sitting in the leadership seats at this point. Complete conflict of interest with all the stuff they have going on. Let's get right to it. It says on the eve of negotiating deadline for WNBA CBA collective bargaining agreement, WNBPA president and vice president Nafisa Collier told ESPN they are proud of the union's solidarity and vowed to keep working for a transfer.
You have to understand the context here. For weeks, the owners had been dead silent, stopping all communication more than 2 weeks ago, long before that January 9th extension deadline even arrived. Yet, despite this radio silence, Breanna Stewart was out there hinting that conversations were ongoing, painting a totally false picture of progress to the public. The truth, however, is starkly and painfully different.
Are thoughtful and reasonable proposals. You guys have asked for more than double of everything that they're talking about. 30% is league, 30% revenue, not happening. $10.5 million cap, not happening. So, whatever. Ogwumike said, "Fee's right. I'm proud of how professional and patient we've been." What do you mean professional? Y'all was taking shots at the WNBA owners on Instagram. That wasn't professional. What are you talking about? Y'all been trying to win people over in public perception throughout the entire negotiation. What are you talking about? You guys been playing victim the whole time. Like, oh man. She said the progress that we've seen, or
The reality is that the owners had simply ceased engaging entirely, clearly tired of the perpetual negotiation loop that was going nowhere. This calculated silence from ownership wasn't just a tactic or a pause. It was a clear sign they were preparing for a decisive move, effectively leaving the players unknowingly walking straight into a void while thinking they were still in the game. Now, suddenly, you see the players scrambling, talking loudly about a desire to negotiate in good faith. But let's be real, this sudden shift in rhetoric comes only after the owner's complete disengagement, looking like a desperate attempt to salvage a situation that is spiraling out of control. It really exposes the union's prior stance, where good faith seemed like a secondary concern until the consequences became real.
Negotiations are, it's been very upsetting and disappointing. Okay, victim now. You're upset and you're disappointed. The tone of the negotiations coming from the league is very dismissive, very disrespectful, you know. They've said over and over again that the players don't understand the business, and for them to put a blanket statement like that over players who clearly we do. We are very smart, educated women. We know what we're asking for. We know that it's not too much like they're saying. So that's been very disappointing to have that be the tone of conversations when we are in such a transformational era. Like NECA said, we're for both sides be benefiting and reaping the benefits of that. All right.
The owners, having felt ignored and disrespected for months during these talks, clearly perceived the sudden pivot as a belated tactical maneuver rather than a genuine change of heart about the compromise. They aren't buying the sudden willingness to talk when the other side spent months digging their heels in. And then there's the media strategy. You see this ESPN article detailing the WNBA CBA Quanta with union leaders Nneka Ogwumike and Nafisa Collier, where they talked about solidarity and vowed to keep working. But if you read between the lines, the interview reveals the union strategy playing the victim card throughout the entire piece to win public favor.
He said the CBA y'all are offering are going to put them $700 million in the hole. They're not taking that deal, so I don't know what. I don't get. I want to get to. Okay. Hold on one second. Okay, Ogwumike said I feel like there's a bit of by-the-book, antiquated approach to negotiations that is being used on the league side, and it foils drastically in comparison to what we are as a league. It said there's been a lot of talk and speculation about around the relationship between Kathy and the players. I really do feel like
the tone of that entire interview is one of deep frustration and disappointment, explicitly positioning the players as the wronged party in this fallout. This narrative aims to garner public sympathy, but it clashes sharply with the owner's quiet, steely resolve. It is a calculated move to win over public perception, but the owner's actions, or lack thereof, speak louder than any carefully crafted statement about thoughtful and reasonable proposals.
That we want to ensure that we get conversations that lead to something that's transformational in this new agreement. But y'all have taken shots at Kathy at every turn you get. Nafisa Collier just took shots at Kathy 2 days ago. So, you know, I don't get how you're not taking shots. I want to get to this part, the Caitlin Clark part, man, because it's just they are at this point they are playing victim, and I just got to be completely honest with you. That's what's happening right now, man. There's so much that's in this article, man. You have to take a look at this article. Here it is, ESPN at USA Basketball Camp last month. Caitlin Clark talked about the.
But here is where it gets really messy. Like, oh man, she said the progress we've seen, but let's talk about the elephant in the room. A glaring conflict of interest plagues the union leadership, specifically Ogwumike and Collier. While representing the players, they also run their own business ventures, Unrivaled and Project B. You have to ask, how can they genuinely negotiate on behalf of all players when their personal financial interests potentially diverge from the group's best interests? This situation raises serious, uncomfortable questions about their ability to lead impartially, casting a long shadow over the integrity of the union's demands. When the people at the bargaining table have outside projects that depend on the league's landscape, those ventures directly undermine their credibility when they're supposed to be fighting for the collective good. With the WNBA CBA set to expire at midnight, the league is heading straight into a status quo phase. While theoretically negotiations could continue during this period, the reality on the ground is far grimmer. A work stoppage or a full-blown lockout remains a distinct possibility. And while there is no immediate loss of player benefits right this second, the clock is ticking loudly. However, don't mistake this for safety. This legal limbo actually provides the owners with immense leverage. They can effectively press pause on the entire season if they choose, forcing the union to confront the real, tangible consequences of their impasse without the safety net of an active season. Nafisa Collier expressed deep frustration that after 15 months, negotiations haven't progressed further. She emphatically stated that players are united and refuse to accept a bad deal, insisting they are just awaiting the league's response to their thoughtful and reasonable proposals. This firm stance paints a picture of unwavering player solidarity, but it also highlights the complete disconnect with the owner's perspective on what actually constitutes a fair agreement. Yet these thoughtful and reasonable proposals are anything but reasonable in the owner's eyes. The union has demanded more than double the current compensation, including a massive 30% revenue share and a skyrocketing $10.5 million salary cap. These are astronomical figures that ownership has repeatedly and loudly deemed financially unsustainable for the business model. This fundamental disagreement over basic economic realities forms the core of the breakdown, illustrating an unbridgeable chasm between the two sides. Ogwumike proudly described the union's approach as professional and patient, but that claim rings hollow throughout negotiations when you look at the actual behavior and the results. I mean, think about it. Players were openly taking shots at the WNBA owners on Instagram, mocking them in public posts that undermines any semblance of professionalism they claim to have. This public posturing, meant to win over public opinion, ultimately alienated the very people they needed to negotiate with, exposing a critical misstep in their communication strategy. The union leaders, steeped in their victim narrative, decried the league's negotiations as dismissive and disrespectful while ignoring their own provocations. They vehemently asserted that players, as smart, educated women, fully understand the business, attempting to counter the owner's claims to the contrary. But this emotional appeal attempts to deflect from the substance of the financial demands, portraying the owners as condescending rather than simply unwilling to accept a losing proposition. At the heart of the players' demands lies a new salary system directly tied to a meaningful share of the revenue. And that is the sticking point. Ogwumike stated she's seen no good faith negotiation from the league to even approach a middle ground on this core issue. This unwavering focus on revenue sharing, however, appears to completely ignore the league's financial constraints, creating an impasse where compromise seems impossible from the union's perspective because they refuse to acknowledge the math. The owner's position is clear and financially stark, and what is that math? The union's proposed CBA would plunge the league a staggering $700 million in the hole. This devastating financial projection is the undeniable roadblock that no amount of rhetoric can hide. Owners are simply not going to agree to a deal that guarantees such catastrophic losses, period. No matter how much the players plead for more, this financial chasm is the cold, hard truth behind the owner's refusal to continue negotiation. Ogwumike criticized the league's negotiation style as by the book and antiquated, suggesting it fails to reflect the modern WNBA's dynamic spirit. This framing attempts to paint owners as old-fashioned dinosaurs resistant to necessary change. However, dismissing the owner's legitimate financial concerns as merely antiquated ignores the very real business implications of the union's demands, further widening the gap between the two sides. Union leaders tried to downplay talk and speculation about their strained relationship with Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, claiming their focus wasn't on feelings about any individuals. This statement, however, directly contradicts their history of taking shots at Kathy at every turn. Their attempt to distance themselves from personal animosity rings completely hollow, exposing a clear attempt to control the narrative now that things have gone south. The most telling moment in the entire saga came when Caitlin Clark spoke out at a USA basketball camp. She emphasized the critical need for both sides to compromise to move forward. This wasn't just a casual suggestion, it was a plea for rationality, yet the union leadership, specifically Ogilmike and Collier completely glossed over Clark's message, effectively sweeping her call for mutual compromise under the rug, unwilling to address its implications. When directly confronted with Clark's comments, Collier vaguely agreed, claiming the union had been very compromising, respectful, and realistic in their demands. She insisted the league simply wasn't reciprocating these efforts. This response deftly sidestepped the actual point of Clark's message that both sides needed to bend and instead shifted blame entirely back to the owners. Ogwumi echoed this deflection, asserting the players had been more flexible, more than reasonable, expressing sad and disappointing sentiments that the league failed to see players' wins and league wins. This continued victimhood narrative completely ignored the implicit criticism in Clark's call for compromise, reinforcing the union's unyielding position rather than acknowledging any need for self-reflection. Pressed on specific compromises, the union offered only vague details, mentioning bending on our share of the revenue and creative approaches to revenue sharing, yet despite the talk, their core demand for a 30% revenue share remains firmly in place. This contradiction reveals a superficial willingness to appear flexible without actually budging on their key, financially crippling demands, a strategy that owners have clearly seen through. The union's strategy has consistently relied on public perception and victimhood, pushing for owners to shoulder extensive costs, housing, cars, and massive revenue shares, despite the projected $700 million loss. This tactic, however, has utterly failed. The owners have unequivocally called their bluff, signaling that appeals to public sympathy are no substitute for realistic financial negotiation. The owners have reached their breaking point, their silence, the seen message, and their refusal to engage further with the union's current demands signal a complete and total shutdown. Caitlin Clark's vital plea for mutual compromise was not just ignored, but actively sidestepped by union leadership, and that mistake might cost them everything. Now the WNBA faces an uncertain future, where owners may very well move forward with a roster of rookies and replacement players, leaving many veteran stars and their crumbling union completely out in the game they helped build.